Final United happy hour of 2020. I just almost knocked over my microphone. I am excited. We have 2 festive fixtures this week and a happy hour. Let's get to it.
Yeah, hello and welcome to, as Paulie said, the final United happy hour of 2020. Paulie, I would like to say it's been an epic year of happy hours, but we only actually started doing this a month or two ago, so it's been quite a short year for the happy hour. But
still haven't lost the league game. We should have started sooner.
There you go. If we'd have been doing it all year, mate, God knows where we'd have been now. But well, we'd have probably been same place because
exactly. I was going to say third place.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're in exactly the same place. So yeah, that wouldn't change anything. But no, look, it's been an interesting year, hasn't it, Paulie? 2020, both on and off the pitch, and I suppose we'll have another opportunity to sum up the year on another show. But let's get cracking like we normally do with what's on social media, Paulie.
Oh, it's
There we go. It wouldn't be an happy hour without a technical glitch in there somewhere, would it?
Still working it out
as well. So, yeah, no, all good. So, what is on social media, Paulie? It's more about what's been on social media this week. Obviously, the Leicester game was an interesting game for a lot of reasons, wasn't it, Paulie? I feel like there's a lot of talking points from that game, and we could probably spend a whole show just talking about Leicester. It was so eventful, so many things going on there. But first of all, Paulie, what was your thoughts on the game? 2-2, looking at it in the broad scheme of things, the run that we've been on and what we've got coming up. What was your overall thoughts on the game with the result?
Grand scheme of things, good result. 2-2 away in the midst of the festive period when you've got a million games. Everybody's going to drop points. You know that you're not going to just keep winning away games. Eventually, you're not going to win one. So better to draw one than lose one. Leicester's a good team. So in the grand scheme of things, it's not bad. It always sucks to get a draw when you've led. It sucks more when you've led twice. It really sucks when you thought you scored a winner with about 10 minutes to go. But grand scheme of things, it's a good result. It was definitely a frustrating game, that one you really thought we kind of threw away.
Yeah, and I think that's why I wanted to start off by just asking you what you thought about the result, because I've looked at social media this week since the game, and I've seen a lot of reactions, some over the top, to be fair, about how United have thrown it away. They've almost things like, suggestions that obviously now Pochettino looks like he's going to PSG. Is this Q a bad run? I think it's very over the top. I think if you look at that game the second in the league, I think they'd won their 3 games leading up to that. They're a side in good form. It's always a tricky place to go, as the game showed there last season, when we had to go there to get top 4. I just think that it's one of those results Sunday. I think if you get a win to maybe win, it's not a bad point at all. All of a sudden, if we lose,
I think that's the thing, is it's one of those. It's one of those you have to wait and see. If it's one of those you have to wait and see what happens later type of things. Like when we said losing to PSG wasn't a disaster, and in hindsight it wasn't, or when we said, like, all right, they lost to Istanbul, which we actually did say losing to Istanbul would be a disaster, but we said you have enough time, and when they won against Istanbul, you still have 2 games to get 1 point. So it's one of those where, if you look back on it, and if they win against Wolves tonight, and if they take 4 points out of the next game, I think 4 points out of the next game would be good. Obviously, I want 6. Obviously, each one would be dropping points against either Wolves or Villa would be a letdown. But in the grand scheme of things, 4 points, probably not the worst thing in the world.
I think it's really interesting there that you say 4 points not the worst thing in the world. I wonder if that's a sign of just how far teams like Wolves and Aston Villa have come, Paulie, or whether it's just a sign of how far United have dropped, that we no longer expect them to win these points. Because the last Wolves team that were in the Premier League before Nuno, so I'm looking back to the team, what would have been around about 2010, 11, I think, things like that.
We lost the Wolves that year, though. I know they were relegated. We lost.
Yeah, I know. But I remember a game where I think we won 5-0 at home against them, or 3-0, wasn't it? Something like that. We had a couple of League Cup wins at home against them, and it never seemed to be a problem game. But I think since Nuno's come in, it's just been one of those weird fixtures, hasn't it, Paulie, where we seem to have played each other quite a lot. I feel like, if it's not been the league, it's been cup matches, and it's got to a stage where I just think both teams just know too much about each other now, don't they? And
it's really weird because our record is poor against Wolves. 1 win in how many games? Like 8 or at this point under Ollie. Wolves were the team that were the first team to really sit deep and frustrate us when Ollie came in. It was the first team that all of a sudden all of our possession worked against us. And they hit us on the counter and they scored 4 goals in 2 games and beat us with that. And we couldn't break them down. It was the first time that really happened. But it was weird because everything that we've done against Wolves has been so clustered. And we played them twice in a 3-game span at the end of the season. And then in between that, and then we ended up playing them, carrying over to the next season, we ended up playing them 3 times in 13 games. And in between those 13 games, we won 2 and drew 2, or drew 3. No, we won 3 and drew 2. Yeah. That's 5 games out of 13. So like 8 losses. That's bad. So Wolves were kind of like this shit sandwich, for lack of a better word. Yeah. And then you go and we play them in the cup in January and we draw. But like, you look at what our team was in those games. When we played Wolves last year, you look at it and Wolves away. That's basically the standard team that you would normally see. But then we go into the cup and you're playing Tahith Chong and Juan Mata and Brandon Williams, Ashley Young, Matic and Pereira are your midfield. Like, where are you going to get goals from? So yeah, it was like a very boring 0-0 draw. Yeah. Then you play them in the cup replay, and that's basically the side that we had in January because Rashford was hurt. And then you play them again at the end of the month. And so it ended up being 3 times in 9 games again. And at the end of the month, Matic was suspended. So you have to start Fred and Pereira in midfield. And within a half hour, Ollie had moved Bruno back and pushed Pereira up, which kind of limited Fernandez's ability to impact the game. So last year, they did a really good job against Wolves. That first game, they did not let Wolves counter on them at all. So Wolves had nothing, and United should have won. They missed the penalty. And then in January, it was 3 times in 9 games in our worst month of the season. So it seems really bad because January of 2020 and the end of the 18-19 season, which is when we were playing Wolves, were Ollie's 2 worst periods as United manager. And it just happens that we played Wolves a million times in each of them. So I think it gets a little overblown there. Yeah. In the grand scheme of things, like, we are the better team and we should be able to win tonight. They are threatening, but we should beat Wolves at home.
Yeah, look, we'll come on to Wolves and Aston Villa. We had planned to talk about them at the end. Paulie, I just want to bring this comment up to read out because it's just off topic a little bit, but you give me some information about this and it is going around social media at the moment. So I just wonder if you could answer this for Aravind. He said, slightly off topic, but what are the rules precisely in the League Cup if a team is down with COVID? I remember earlier on one of the lower league teams, I think Leyton Orient, had to forfeit. Now, you put some information about this in the group chat, I think, the other day, didn't you, Paulie, about, was it you or you're looking at me quite quizzically there?
I don't know if I put it in the group chat, but I could tell you I did read this answer earlier today. Is basically they did make a rule that said only like the first few rounds would be forfeited. And that applies only to the Cup, and everything else is basically going to be rescheduled. The Premier League might have set a bad precedent when Newcastle and Aston Villa was postponed instead of rescheduled, because what's going to end up happening is, City are going to have to make, City right now are missing games. They're going to have to make them up at a certain point, and they're probably going to end up being put on that Tottenham schedule. In September, Tottenham had to play in the League Cup on Tuesday and the Europa League on Thursday, and then the Premier League on Sunday.
Yeah.
And that's probably going to happen to City. They're going to have to make up these games at a certain point, and they don't have a lot of open weekends. Pep is going to inevitably complain about the schedule and the fixture congestion, and he's right. He's going to have a point, because at the end of the day, the Premier League is trying to condense a 10-month season into 9 months. They didn't leave any extra room for cancellations or anything. And that all comes down to UEFA. And it comes back to UEFA saying last April, when every single person in the world was taking a wait and see approach, UEFA said, we'll postpone the Euros by a year, but we're starting them June 2021. And it's like, UEFA, you could just push the Euros back to July, and we could push the season back. We could push next season back a month. We have to adjust for the 2022 World Cup anyway. Yeah. And then this way we get a little bit of a buffer to finish out this season. But no, we're starting the Euros in June 2021, and everybody's going to have to make do. And when Pep inevitably complains about this, he's 100% right.
Yeah, and I think some people have jokingly said here, perfect time to scrap the League Cup. Now, I'm not an advocate of scrapping the Cup moving forward, but I do wonder this season, Paulie, to give themselves a bit more wiggle room for postponements and things like that, some more midweek slots, whether it might have been a possibility to have left the Cup just for this season, given the circumstances. And then, obviously, we start it again next year, because, I follow a few lower league teams as well. I know it's been an inconvenience to them, obviously, having to put, because when you get below the Premier League and you go to Championship, League One, League Two in England, it actually starts costing you a lot of money to put games on, you know what I mean? And if these teams aren't going to go far in this cup competition, and even if they do go far, if there's no financial incentive there, then it's really not worth it. So I do wonder whether this season the League Cup is something that could have maybe been put on the back burner. But look, I don't want to spend too much time on that. I do know it's something that's been whistling around social media. People have been getting quite hysterical about the fact that United might get a bye to the final. I don't know. I don't think it'll come to that.
They will not.
I think the best that United could hope for is that we have some sort of like Liverpool style from last season when they played Aston Villa, where they literally just fielded 11 academy players. That might be.
I can tell you though,
that puts a lot of pressure on United then, because obviously the pressure's on. It's not
the Ollie out crew would love. Yeah, if City had to forfeit that match, because then if United do go on and win the competition, they'll be able to say, "Oh, yeah, it doesn't count though because they didn't play in the set. That they got to buy to the finals."
Yeah, exactly. No, so let's go back to that. Let's rewind it all the way back to start the show, Paulie. We were talking about this Leicester game, 2-2. Mad game. Like I say, lots of bones of contention, lots of debating points. You'd have probably loved it, to be fair, Paulie. I'd imagine on social media you've had many of debate. But let's look at the first goal, because for me that's the biggest debate. The Leicester first goal, I think we should say. Where do you place the blame for this? Because look, Maguire for me makes a bit of a mess of the clearance, Paulie. Scott McTominay's role in it is not great. Bruno obviously gives the ball away, trying to do something fancy in Leicester's final third. In our own final third. Where do you put the blame on for this goal?
First of all, before I get to that, I don't know what it is, whether it's the angle of the camera, probably the fact that I'm wearing this specific shirt and everything. I feel like I look a lot like Morgan Schneiderlin right now.
Wow, okay. You got Morgan Schneiderlin shirt, mate. You match up there.
It's the shirt. It's like my face looks very narrow and rectangular. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, thank you very much. Rate us 5 stars, subscribe, but also go over to YouTube and you can check out what I'm talking about.
I do also, quickly, Paulie, I do think as well, those people who are listening on all these platforms, they probably wish you probably sounded like Morgan Schneiderlin. He's got a very easy listening voice to go to as well. But anyway, we'll carry on, mate.
Joe, everybody always wants to put the blame on someone for a goal. And sometimes a goal is just a really well-taken goal. And you just have to tip your cap to them, chalk it up. Great job. This is not one of those goals. But this is not one of those goals that is any particular person's fault. The Harry Maguire thing I laugh at because it was funny. He fell down. He looked like Phil Jones. It was funny, but he passed the ball straight to Bruno. He did his job. Like he looked stupid doing his job. And if if we were a Mourinho team where it's just get the ball out, clear it, and he fell down and that was his attempted clearance, and it just happened to go to Bruno and he got lucky, then I'd say, then it'd be a different story. But if he didn't fall down, that's the pass he was making anyway. Maguire's never one to just hoof it long. He was, he's going to play out from the back. So he did his job. He's out. Bruno Fernandes gets the ball in acres of space and tries to dummy or nutmeg a player on the edge of his box. And I forgot to put the picture in the thing, so we can't bring it up right now. But if they showed the behind the goal angle, Anthony Martial's all the way at the center circle. Marcus Rashford is playing very narrow. The man is directly in between Bruno and Rashford. And if you're looking to start a break, the only option he has is to try to dribble past this guy and bring it to the left where you're in acres of space. And worst comes to worst, you open up a passing lane to Rashford, or you take it too far, you run out of bounds, whatever. Bruno decides to try to go right through the guy's legs, which Leicester have. If the reward was, if it works, Rashford is 2-on-1 with Martial in, then fine. Leicester have everybody back. So even if you do this, you're not gaining anything.
No.
And he goes through their legs and he was the ball because it was a stupid, foolish decision. And then Scott McTominay doesn't close down Harvey Barnes. He just shows him his left foot. Now, Barnes is right-footed, but Barnes has 3 goals with his left foot this year. He can hit him. And McTominay just lets him do that. And then De Gea's poor. So it's all 3 of them.
Yeah.
The thing is, McTominay, I always like to use, when it comes to the defense, I always like to use the fire analogy. McTominay is the fireman. Yeah. There's a fire. Leicester just got the ball. They're coming. And McTominay is the fireman who has to come and put the fire out, and he does a terrible job at it.
Yeah.
But this wasn't an accident that caused the fire. This was Bruno Fernandes was playing with matches next to open gasoline. Yeah. You're asking for trouble. And that's where, so you want to blame the fireman for not putting out the fire, or blame the guy who started the fire. So the fire started here, and that's fine. Look, Bruno is not 100% guilty. He shares the guilt with other players, McTominay, De Gea. But what I found interesting was, you think back to the goal Crystal Palace scored last season, the winner. Pogba lost the ball at midfield, and Palace ran all the way down the pitch. Wan-Bissaka was back. Lindelof was back. Marcus Rashford tracked back. And Wan-Bissaka and Rashford did a very poor job of tracking back. They ended up leaving. Was it Jordan Ayew who scored that goal? They left him open.
Yeah.
And then David De Gea makes a terrible mistake and lets that in, and United lose.
Yeah.
Everybody was so quick to blame Pogba, who lost the ball at midfield as United are pushing for an equalizer. And that just says so much here of why you so, these situations are very, very similar. Is you lost the ball, put your defense in a bad situation, but your defense had ample opportunity to snuff out that situation. And then from there, your goalkeeper should have made the save and he didn't. So
go on, carry on. Sorry.
In one situation, we're blaming the midfielder. In the other one, we're trying to blame everyone else, including the defender who passed him the ball because the defender fell down as he passed him the ball.
Yeah. Look, Paulie, you probably got the stats to back this up. You've got stats for everything. So you've either got the stats to back it up or the stats to argue it. Bruno Fernandes in that game against Leicester, he had an assist and a goal again. It seems like that's standard for him these days. He's doing that quite often. Do you think, just to try and look at your tweet there and the argument you're trying to make, do you think that is the argument that people will say, look, it seems to be that in these games where he's making crucial mistakes, Paul, he's also doing things that can help us win the game? I mean, he almost scored the match winner. The assist for the first goal is quite fortuitous, but it's an assist nonetheless. I'd be interested to see, Paul, in the games where he's made what I would call major mistakes, like for the Leicester goal there, actually the impact that he's had on United at the other end in terms of scoring and creating a goal. And I think that's why people are so happy to overlook it, aren't they? But, I mean, I don't know what you think on that.
You're right. But you can overlook it without dismissing it. That's the thing, is if you dismiss it as a mistake, and the people, the responses I got to this tweet were just hilarious, because people were saying, well, the difference is Pogba did X, Y, and Z, and it was like, okay, but all of that came after the Crystal Palace match. Like, oh, Pogba spent the entire year trying to force a move out, and it's like, okay, this was the third game of the year. At that point, the only thing he had said was it might be time for a new challenge elsewhere. You can't fault what he did in February back in September when the reaction was this. And it's, if you can't acknowledge, look, everybody's going to have a bias. Brighton does spring to mind. Everybody's going to have a bias. It's impossible not to. But if you can't acknowledge, that Pogba played a role in that goal, but Wan-Bissaka and De Gea should have done better, and that Bruno played a role in this goal, and McTominay and De Gea should have done better, then you can't be objective, and we can't take you seriously.
It's very difficult to take people serious in there. But I was going to ask you next, but how serious can you take people? Because I don't care how good of you are as a player, Paulie. You can still have games and moments in games where you're not good, Paulie, and you're poor, and you have to acknowledge that. I mean, as good as Ronaldo was for a couple of seasons at United when he won Ballon d'Or, Paulie, there were still moments in games that he would infuriate me, and there were still games where he would infuriate me, especially like when he'd be fouled and he'd be laying on the ground when there's a counter attack going on and things like that. You know what I mean? Nobody should ever be abstained from criticism, and that's what I mean, Paulie. Unless you can find it in you to objectively criticize when people need to be criticized, then you can't take people's opinions seriously, can you?
Right, and I don't get why we're doing it. Like, Bruno Fernandes made a mistake. That doesn't make him a worse player. That doesn't make him less of a superstar. That doesn't mean we can't rely on him to score goals and get us. That doesn't make him not our best player. That doesn't mean we're not where we are because of him. But he made a mistake. And we should be able to freely acknowledge that and say that, because you know what? You know what's the number one teacher in the world? Making mistakes. You learn from your mistakes. So he makes this mistake, and it's good that the ball finally ends up in the net, because against Everton at the end of the game, he made a blind back heel to Pogba in his own half of the pitch, and Pogba wasn't there, or Pogba was marked. So it got stolen, and Everton went right back down and had a chance, but it didn't end up in the net. So it's easy to be like, oh, my bad, and then forget about it.
One thing I'll say on this, Paulie, is I'm quite happy to have seen Solskjaer's comments after the game as well, where he jokingly said, you know, he tears my hair out at times because, you know, he can be brilliant, but also he can do this. And I hope that that's the message that we got in the media. I hope that that's the message being conveyed to Bruno, because you do want to sort of subtly criticize him, but not in a way that you're going to upset him, because obviously he's your best player. But you do need to jokingly say, look,
that's
Bruno,
exactly it. Joe,
you're stop doing this to me, sort of thing.
Joe, you're exactly right. Is if this is, you know, it's easy to like what you said, we can overlook it because he has the contributions at the other end. Yeah. But I wish he would have the contributions to goals at one end and knock out the ones on the other end. That would be nice. And you don't, he has this gunslinger approach, and you don't want to systematize him. You don't want to lock him in to make him this robotic player, because that takes away from Bruno. And Ollie's right. You got to, we talked about this, you know, in one of our early shows. You have to find the balance between, hey, be here and play this role, versus go ahead and be Bruno. So if this is what you need, what happens in order to get the full Bruno package, great. Like I want it, because Bruno's good. And as Ollie said, it's more entertaining to win 3-2 than 0-0. But I just wish that, like, for some of these things, it's simple decision-making. And I just wish you'd be better at it. Like, you're on the edge of your own box. Don't try to nutmeg a guy. You're in your own, stop with the back heels in your own half of the pitch.
It's game situation, Paulie. They're 1-0 up in the game as well. That's the other thing. There is no need to take the risk there, is there? You know what I mean?
That's exactly what it is the responses I got from people would say, oh, he scored the next goal, so he made up for it. Yeah, but
He wouldn't have needed to if he had.
And when did that goal come? And when did that goal come? In the 79th minute.
Yeah.
So we don't know how this game would have played out, but we also talk about how we need to get Bruno a rest. Well, if he doesn't make this mistake, maybe Leicester score 5 minutes later anyway. Or maybe they push for a goal and we hit him on the counter and we go 2-0 up. And maybe after 60 minutes, Bruno gets to come off. We had to play him for 90 minutes against Everton. We had to play him for 90 minutes against Leicester. If you cut out these mistakes, maybe Leicester don't ever end up scoring. And if we can get a second goal, then he doesn't have to play the full 90 minutes and he can rest and recover for the next match. But he makes the mistake. Yeah. Yes, he then scores. He scores the winner the winner, quote unquote, to make up for it. And we lose and we drop points because of a different mistake that has nothing to do with Bruno. Yeah. But the cost for that will never be fully measured because we don't know. It could have been that maybe we only had to play Bruno 60 minutes instead of 90 yet again because of this mistake. And I mean, Wokish has this comment, errors are always costly. You need to brush that up, regardless of talent. Yeah, it's just when he makes the high risk, low reward passes, that's what you need to cut out. It's just weigh everything up between the risk, reward, and difficulty. I have no problem with difficult. It's that pass that you made, that difficult pass that you made. What's the reward factor if it gets pulled off versus what's the risk if it doesn't? And if the risk outweighs the reward, play it safer. I know it's boring, but in your own end of the pitch, when you cross that halfway line, go be Bruno by all means.
Paulie, I always look to, for a good example of this, I always look at La Liga from about the year of 2000 to the year of 2010, let's say. And you look at that Galactico team that Real Madrid have. Now, considering that the team that they had there, they didn't win probably as much as they should have won, both in Europe and domestically. And that just shows you can be great players, Paulie, but if you're going to make mistakes, you're not going to win things overall come the end of the season. And then you look at Barcelona from 2008 to 2010, for example. They had fantastic players, but they also didn't make mistakes. And hey, presto, what did you get, Paulie? You got a team that dominated both domestically and Europe for a good 3 years.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, and that's a good, because you look at Real Madrid and the fantastic players that they had in that one team at one time, but it was no coincidence that they didn't always win things. Now, there was a lot more to it than just making mistakes. Maybe people may have questioned their effort of some players, or the fact that it just didn't gel, but that for me is a good example. But the second goal that you talk about there that Bruno got, that sort of segues us nicely into the next the next thing that's been going around social media, Paulie, and that is the idea that United are already looking to extend Cavani's contract. And the reason that segued nicely, because obviously Cavani played a nice assist in there for Bruno's second goal. Do you think, Paulie, talk of this, I mean, we've known all along that obviously Cavani's got an option for a year after this year if they want it, but do you think we're sort of jumping the gun a little bit here by offering it him now? Would you wait a little bit longer? Do you think this is a good idea?
What the hell are we doing now? What the hell are we doing this now for? When we signed Edinson Cavani, I don't know if I said it to you. I think I said it to a different group chat. I immediately made a joke. I can't wait for him to score 2 or 3 goals in the festive period, and have like 5 goals in that stretch, win an FA Cup game or something, and United extend him for another season, and then he does nothing the rest of the year. Cavani's been great this season. Yeah. Let him show that over the course of the full season. What's the rush here? And people are saying, oh, because he can sign with a new team and leave for free in January. He didn't exactly have a lot of suitors in September. Are we really worried about letting him leave? But we spoke about this when he scored 3 goals in his first 5 Premier League appearances. And we said now it's about managing the minutes so that becomes 6 and 10, 9 and 15. We don't want it to become 5 and 12.
Yeah.
Since that happened, he had to play 3 times in 1 week and blew out his hamstring. So now he's still recovering from a hamstring injury. Yeah. He's 33, and that's going to happen. He has made 5 more appearances in all competitions and has scored 1 goal. So he went from having about 2.8 0.05 goals per 90 to about 0.39, which obviously he was not going to maintain that 2-goal pace, but you want it, if you're bringing on a center forward whose job is to score goals, you want it to be more than 0.39. So he's already slowing down. And those last 5 appearances, by the way, he's played more minutes than he did in the first 5. So he's already slowing down. So just let him finish out the season and say, okay, let's take a look at the grand picture, the grand scheme of things. If you continue to play like this, absolutely sign him. But it's worse to commit to somebody on high wages if he stops performing. I mean, we've rushed to extend the loan of Odion Ighalo because he had scored like 4 goals in the Europa League and the FA Cup. And I said, I'm in favor of extending this right now. It was because of COVID. It was difficult. But like, even at the time, before COVID hit, I said, well, like, let's wait until we see where we finish before we extend him, because so far he hasn't scored in the Premier League. So if he's good in the Europa League, that, he's not really going to help us in the Champions League. If we qualify for the Champions League, we don't really have a use for him. And we're paying £150,000 a week now for Odion Ighalo to make, I think, like 4 appearances for us so far. So we've already paid him millions of pounds for nothing. If Cavani doesn't maintain this pace, you don't want him on the team next year.
Yeah. Yeah, look, that's a good point that he makes there, but I don't think there's any value to protect on Cavani necessarily. I'm not too worried about this idea that he could go into January, Pauly, and other clubs, because look, at 33 years old, Pauly, who's going to be able to give him the wages plus the potential trophy success that and the stature of a club like Manchester United? If you look at who he was linked with before, Atletico Madrid, Benfica, in the year that's gone by now, Pauly, I don't see how he's become more appetizing to them or how they've become more appetizing to him in the year that's just passed since the last time he was linked with them. So that doesn't worry me too much.
Oh, and people have to forget. People have to forget this concept of maintaining value. And the number one people who have to forget it is Manchester United. The market is shifting, and COVID's only going to expedite this. The market is shifting, and especially for a team like United, who are tied up who don't have liquid cash right now. We're taking out loans, we're bleeding money, and a lot of that stems from being tied up with bad contracts from Angel Di Maria and Schweinsteiger and Lukaku and all these players that we're still paying for. Because it takes 5 years to pay all the fees and everything. So you want, financial flexibility is going to become more important than value, because teams are not teams are not running to sign 27, 28-year-olds anymore. Yeah. It's funny when we keep seeing like United want money for Paul Pogba. Like, who's going to give you that money? Nobody. So that's an interesting one to come at. That's going to happen over the summer, which we are not going to talk about today because we'll be here for 3 hours.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to respond to Aravind. He said, I'm just kidding. I know, mate. We probably need to get StreamYard to invent a sarcasm button for us, don't we? So that we know when people are joking. Look, somebody commented earlier on, I put it up, Pauly, about, it's kind of usual with our board and being premature. Look, we saw Phil Jones have 5 good games a couple of years ago and he got a 4-year contract as a reward, didn't he? So, look, we know that what they're like. You said Ighalo. I was trying to think of another example. I knew there was one, but I couldn't remember which player it was. But yeah, you're right. Ighalo, he sort of did really well, and then United sort of clamoured to get this extension. I remember it causing them quite a lot of stress at the time as well, wasn't there?
There is no problem with, at the end of the season, extending him. If he earns that contract, extend him by all means. Aditya, with this comment of City are the best example of maintaining their contractual flexibility, 100%. And go back to when Pep first arrived. When Pep first arrived at City, he was limited in what he could do his first season. But year 2, he was able to spend a lot of money because like 9 players they let their contracts expire. United. They let Antonio Valencia expire. They were willing to let Marwan Fellaini expire. And then Mourinho strong-armed them into giving a new contract, but that was it. City are just like, look, money, it's not even like United or Chelsea or Liverpool or any one of those teams who make a lot of money from selling players. United are terrible at selling players. They don't sell anybody. So
I think the biggest problem with selling players nowadays is wages, Paulie. I think that's
why you getting them off the books is more important than getting a fee, because the fees are no longer going to come. But like even before we got to this point, United weren't a team that really sold players for money. So like they weren't generating. It's not like they're losing revenue by letting a contract run out, because they weren't generating that revenue anyway. But they are creating flexibility if they let that contract run out, and they should not be afraid to do that. And
if you think, Paulie, it's something that United do once every now and again, and it make big profit on a player. It's not something that they never buy to sell, do they? You know what I mean? I mean, very rarely you see it. I mean, obviously we had a situation with David Beckham, who was an academy product, and they ended up being able to sell him for a few million. They didn't even make that much money on a prime Ruud van Nistelrooy, if you remember, Paulie. They didn't get much more than what they paid for him.
Right, and they sold Ashley Young for $1 million. You know, they got 10 years out of him, but they sold him for $1 million. Like, don't be afraid to let a contract run out. So it gives you that kind of flexibility. And if Cavani does leave, okay, so find another one. Like, you know, right now he's not tearing the world on fire. He's playing well. He's not tearing the world on fire.
Yeah, no, exactly. Look, I just want to say quickly on Cavani before we finish, Paulie, just give my thoughts. I will say one thing about him, whether you give him your extended contract now or you don't. I have been impressed with him so far at United. Sure. One thing I will say is I've been impressed with his fitness and his hunger. That's one of the things I did question about Cavani. You do look at a player when they're 32, 33 and wonder why the hell you come into Manchester United, unless you're like an Ibrahimovic, and then you know. But when I looked at Cavani, I did wonder why he was coming. I did question motives, but look, we're even hearing on the training ground he's been one of the best trainers as well. He
doesn't sound like a player that wants to leave. So what are you worried about in January?
Exactly. Yeah, no, I think so. I think he's enjoying it. That's all the rumours coming out. He's liking Manchester. He's liking the way the club are treating him. So look, I'm impressed with him, and I think you'll see him start more games than he probably doesn't start it till the end of the season. Actually, I think you'll see him play more than I had anticipated to. The other thing I want to get onto now while we're on social media, Paulie, and the other bone of contention that's causing lots of debates and lots of Twitter arguments is around the McTominay-Fred, McTominay and Fred pivot, whatever you want to call it. Look, it's had some good games for United, most notably PSG in the Champions League a couple of times. Leeds United, it worked nicely as well. There too, just off the top of my head, without going into any great thought I can think of. But is it going to be enough for United if they want to go to the next level and win a league or win trophies?
I wrote about this yesterday, and apparently the McTominay crew have come out of their shell, which I haven't seen them since the end of last season, I want to say. But you know, Hader and I have been speaking all morning because
spamming up the group chat, mate.
It's been relentless. And here's the thing. Here's what it ultimately comes down to. Yeah, Aravind, short answer, no. What you asked the question: can McTominay Fred get us to the next level? No. Here's what it comes down to: McTominay and Fred are good midfielders.
Yeah,
but they do not elevate the play of anyone else. You can rely on them to be good. They're not going to make a lot of mistakes. They're good defensively, but they don't elevate the play of the other players, which means when they're on the pitch, it's now on the front four to take on the burden of creating all of the attack. And our front four, which is Rashford, Martial, Bruno, and someone, are not good enough to do that. Bruno is a superstar, and he is. But the rest of them are not. And when the two of them are on the pitch, it makes everybody else's job more difficult in creating an offense. Bruno has done an excellent job of putting the team on his back and doing it all himself this season because he's good enough to do that. But you're worried about Bruno's fitness and, him getting a break, you can't ask him to carry the team every single game. You can't ask him to do it all himself. He'll wear himself out. And that's the big problem. Like, when you bring in the Nemanja Matic, what does the Nemanja Matic do? I mean, that's a very difficult question to explain quickly. And yet, when the Nemanja Matic plays, our attacking numbers go way up. Way up. And Nemanja Matic is not in the slightest an offensive player. He doesn't shoot, he doesn't assist, he doesn't even get near the box. But when he plays, he lets everybody else play to their best. Versus McTominay and Fred, they're just there. And they don't elevate the rest of the team. And it says it all that this is a team this season. They're winning about, 40-something% of the games that they've started. And if you look at in their career, or in the last 2 seasons, when playing as a pair, so not a midfield diamond, not a midfield 3, but just as a pair, either with a back 3 or in a 4-2-3-1, they have played 17 times. And they have won less than half of that. And if you want to say, oh, but Bruno wasn't here, well, they played 11 times before Bruno came. They won 5 of those. That's just under half. They have played 7 times as a pair since Bruno came. They have won 3 of those. And that includes, we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt here, but that includes the Newcastle match, which was 1-1 when Pogba came on and replaced Fred.
Yeah.
And then the other argument, of course, is, oh, but look at their record in the big games. Okay. They are really, and you said it before, oh, they're huge in these big games. They are living off of that run where they beat Manchester City and Tottenham twice. Yeah. Because since then, they haven't won a game. They haven't lost. And there's certainly a value to not losing. But they are at their best when they disrupt. When they disrupt. So they're at their best when they play these teams, and they just have to disrupt in the midfield. But what happens this year when you play a team like Chelsea or Manchester City and they come in and play far more conservative, which they did. And PSG at home played far more conservative and basically said, we're not going to try to own the midfield and let you disrupt. We're going to, when you get the ball, we're going to guard the outside, and we're going to guard Bruno and Martial and Rashford, and we're going to make McTominay and Fred beat us. And they can't.
Yeah. But you say there, Paulie, that, look, not losing is not a bad thing. But then again, the question was to you is, can they take us to the next level? And this might sound harsh, Paulie, but those draws that you showed in that graphic there, those games are the games that you need to be winning some of those, Paulie, if you do want to go to the next level. Because the way you go to the next level is by turning draws against Chelsea, Manchester City, Liverpool into wins. And that's how you do it, isn't it? So I just think, yes, you can say they haven't lost those games, but those draws, some of those are as bad as losses for United if they want to go to the next level, because you need to win those games. You know what I mean, Paulie? That's what I'd say.
Look, I'll defend them here. You do need to win some of those games. The one I really, the Chelsea match bothers me because, Lampard came with a good plan. We're just going to play conservatively. You won't be able to counterattack on us. Let McTominay and Fred beat us. And Solskjaer switched it up at the end of the game, but too late. And it really felt like the game was there to be taken. The City match, Pep did the same thing. They came in, we're going to play conservatively. You're not going to be able to hit us on the counter. Yeah. But we wanted to be able to stop City also. And we made one change, and that was Martial for Greenwood. So it was very much like we set out to do this. So we accomplished what we set out to accomplish in that game.
Yeah, I just want to go to this question from a teacher, Pauly. I think you must have talked about this, Pauly, at some point, either on this show or on Red Devils Talk, because I feel like we always talk about double pivots. They come up every week and the different combinations that United have tried in midfield. But why do you think Ollie hasn't tried Pogba and Fred in the league? I'd say it's our best pivot. That's from a teacher. What's your thoughts on that, Pauly?
It's my biggest double pivots. It's my biggest criticism of Ollie. Why haven't you done this? And it doesn't make sense. If you look at their numbers when the two of them were together last season, which is a bad and small sample size because they only played together for 45 minutes against Newcastle in the second half, and they played together for like a half hour against like Bournemouth during Project Restart when we were up by a lot. But that half hour against Newcastle, they put up their best attacking out. Newcastle kind of had packed it in. It was Boxing Day. They had a game in 2 days, but we put up our best attacking output of the season in that second half. And we did that with Martial and Rashford off the pitch. We did that with a front four of Pereira and Mata and Lingard, and Pogba and Fred are out there pulling strings. And then they played together in Europe, in the Europa League, in the semifinals and the final, where we blew Copenhagen and Sevilla off the pitch. We just couldn't put the ball in the net, but we outshot them. We got 1,000,001 chances. Sevilla, we made 2 mistakes and they put them both in the back of our net. Copenhagen, we couldn't finish. We ran into a hot goalkeeper both times. And it just, my thought is he's worried about the physical, because I was talking to Hader about this morning. Yeah. Last season, from the beginning of the year until when we signed Bruno, we averaged 1.5 goals a game. 4 of those came against Chelsea when we had Pogba. So if you take that game out, it drops to 1.39, which is frankly incredible. All right. Yeah. In 2 of those games, McTominay, Matic, Pogba were hurt, and we had to start a midfield of Pereira and Fred. In 2 of those games, defensively, disaster, calamity. They couldn't keep possession. They couldn't do anything. They were completely bullied in midfield. We conceded 5 goals in those 2 games. We also scored 5. So we lost something defensively, but we very much added something. And to me, it's just at a certain point you have to try, because certainly Pogba would be an upgrade defensively on what Pereira was, that you can make it work enough. Because look, at the end of the day, it's been 17 games in the Premier League of McTominay and Fred. And no matter how you break it down, last season, this season, before Bruno, after Bruno, they are playing at the exact same pace, which is about a 60, they're playing at like 1.76 points a game. It's about a 68 point season. Like, that is average. It's bang on average. If you're United, you want to be better than that. And every other game that United have played this year, whenever they don't play McTominay, Fred, and this includes Arsenal, where McTominay and Fred were on the pitch, but we were playing in a diamond, they're at if you take all those other games, it's 2.1 something points per game. It's an 80-point average. Like, already, it's just better.
Yeah. Look, I think, Pauly, if he's not going to do it by now, like you said, we've had when is he? Because right now we're seeing probably the best Pogba we've seen for a long time at Manchester United. I actually think Fred's in decent form at the moment. He's certainly not at his worst at the moment. So this seems like an ideal opportunity to give it a go if you're going to have a go. We've got 2 home games coming up now. I mean, I've got to be honest with you. I struggle with them at McTominay and Fred when we're playing at Old Trafford more than anything. Having said that, this is not home and away, like Ollie's said a few times, isn't really a big thing at the moment.
Well, it is. We can't win at home, and away we can.
Yeah, but we are having problems at home, and a lot of that is I look at these home games, Paulie, and I think, yes, we're struggling to win them, but are we creating as much as we could do for a home game? That is the issue. And look, your creative output, I don't care what anyone says. If you're playing Pogba in the pivot there, you're going to create more. even if he just plays one ball over the top that he normally does. So I don't know what you think.
Again, like it's just average. Like what they are good at, disrupting and everything, and running and energy. That's what a mid-table side needs. And the mid-table side would be thrilled with playing at a 68-point pace. But that's not Manchester United. And at McTominay's first moment where he stood out was at the end of the 2018-19 season, when United players were all injured or they didn't care and they were lethargic and they were going through the motion. And McTominay brought his energy and that passion, and it really stood out amongst the team that stunk. And last year, it stood out at the beginning of the season too, amongst the team that was very young and, figuring it out. But in Project Restart, when we were playing the best football that we played in a long time, McTominay was noticeably a level below them. And this year, we start out the season poorly. Everybody's off form. And McTominay comes in, and Solskjaer, after the 6-1, Solskjaer was 100% right to go to McTominay and Fred. And they very much stabilized our season. Full credit to them, because they brought that energy, which stood out while everybody else was still trying to get going. But now, Pogba's back on form. Bruno's on form. Rashford's hitting some form. Martial's doing everything but finishing. Matic is back on form. And suddenly their deficiencies are glaring out again, because you're not lacking that, you don't need the passion and everything. And I describe
I would say they're very good at being a big fish in a small pond, but not very good at being a small fish in a big pond, if you know what I mean.
And individually they have their qualities. It's just together, I mean, if you really want to break it down individually, if you're a Scott McTominay fan, you're not going to like what it comes down to. But individually, you put Fred with Matic, we seem to win. You put McTominay with Matic, we don't seem to win.
Yeah.
So but look, McTominay coming off the bench to help shore up a game, for the last 20 minutes when we have the lead, is a great player.
Yeah.
And Fred has a lot of great qualities about him, but neither one of them, as a pair, they're just too average to really do it for United. And again, like, they did a great job in October, and we are where we are because of them. But at a certain point in December, in January, you have to stop picking these two guys because of what they did in October and start picking your team based on what's happening now. Yeah. Since the November international break, I think McTominay has won 3 of 7 games that he started, or something like that. Pogba's won 4 of 6. And it's not just down to, it's not down to one. I hate one player at a time things, but when it comes to a midfield pair, it's not as bad of a comparison. Maybe it's not red apples to red apples, but red apples to Granny Smith apples.
Yeah.
Because when all other things are considered, when you say, well, who else is playing? It's still Wan-Bissaka, Lindelof, Maguire behind them, interchange Shaw and Telles. And in front of them, it's still Rashford and Martial and Bruno, interchange Mata, Greenwood, James. So for the most part, it is like, when you factor in who else is on the pitch, it's basically the same. And when you just sub out those 2 players, we seem to be at the beginning. Look, September, terrible. Pogba and Matic deserve to be dropped, and McTominay and Fred were needed. But now it's a different story, and we need to adjust it.
Well, judging by the NYPD at your end, Paulie, they think it's criminal to play McTominay and Fred as well, by the sound of it, mate. So since you started talking about it, the sirens have been going, mate. So maybe that's telling us, look, we could talk forever, Paulie, about double pivots. We have done. We've talked for them on lots of shows, and we could talk about United in social media forever. But we've got about 10 minutes left of the show. You put a poll question up the other day, so let's have a look at that, shall we, and move on to that. Yeah, look, Paulie, look, just for the guys of you the ones out there that may be watching today for the first time, if you are, do put a like on this video, subscribe to the channel. We're here every Tuesday and Thursday. Look, we do put a poll question out on our Twitter page at the United Happy Hour. It goes out every week. Paulie puts it out there. We do want to hear from you guys on what you think about something topical at the club at the moment. And obviously, at the moment, it's all about our festive fixture list. We've got one more game remaining of 2020, and then our next game is actually on New Year's Day. It'll be the first game of 2021. But they're actually,
isn't it funny? Like I said, the Wolves, how the scheduling and the clusters of Wolves has been so weird, and yet the first game after New Year's 2020 was Wolves away in the FA Cup, and the last game before New Year's 2021 is Wolves at home. So even when we're not playing Wolves a bunch of times, it's still weird.
It reminds me of that chant that you sing sometimes when you're beating a team easily. You'll sing, "Can we play you every week?" But this is certainly not a team that we want to play every week. But we seem to. So look, the question that you put out this week, Paulie, was which festive fixture had you more worried this week? And look, you gave the option of obviously the two games. So you got Wolves and Aston Villa. It looks like Wolves have just edged it, Paulie. Now we've spent probably more time than we expected at the start of the show talking about Wolves. So I'll quickly ask you what your thoughts are on this. You know, which one worries you most, and then just start off.
What worries you the most, Joe?
Which one worries me the most? I think I put the vote on there, and I put Aston Villa, and I don't know why I put Aston Villa. I think at the moment I worry more about how well Aston Villa are playing as a team. I look at Wolves and I just think they are just famous last words in it tonight. Now you know what's coming, but you know they're without Raul Jimenez at the moment. I think for the first time this season, Nuno's had to chop around a little bit between a back three and a back four. There's a little bit of tactical. They have still got some really good players. I think players like Neto and Podence are very good and very dangerous. And I think some people said in the comments earlier, you think about, obviously we had an issue with Harvey Barnes against Leicester. You've got someone like Neto playing in that position tonight, who is a very good player in good form. So that's a worry for United. But I just think Aston Villa are playing so well. I watched them last night against Chelsea. I was very impressed with them. They're actually going into these big games now thinking they can do something, and that's obviously helped when they beat Liverpool 7-2 earlier on in the season. You know, they probably feel like they could beat anybody after that result. So yeah, I think for me it's Aston Villa. But what's your thoughts, mate?
Yeah, I'm not looking past Wolves. This is like a situation where like I have $1 million, you have, $500,000. I have more money, but it's not like you don't have a lot of money. You still have a pretty penny. So it's not that I'm not worried about Wolves, but I am more worried about Aston Villa. They are playing so well, and their attack can be so far. They are the good news is that they're kind of like Leeds in that they are poor finishers. So they create so many chances, but you can expect them to miss a few. Unless the astonishing thing about that 7-2 win over Liverpool is that they just finished all their chances. They weren't, they kind of got 7 chances that game. It wasn't like they got 20 and scored 7. They just finished them all. They were ruthless. They've had plenty of other games where they have 25 chances and they score 1. So you hope that if you can limit the number of chances they get, you'll probably be able to mitigate that. But you hope that they're going to be too tired because, as Dean Smith said, none of my players want to rest, so I'm not resting them. And it's like, okay, but like you're the manager. It's your job to make sure that they get a rest, even though they don't want to. No player ever wants to.
Guys, I'm quite happy for them to keep going, Paulie. Keep going. Just keep going, guys. Hopefully Grealish in the first 5 minutes will do a hamstring or something. But
players are just going to keep playing. It's your job to make sure that their hamstrings don't give out. So hopefully they're too tired. Wolves, though, again, like I said at the beginning of the show, Ollie prevented them last year from doing the one thing they want to do. They're very good at absorbing your pressure, sitting back, and countering. We attacked them last year with nothing. James, Lingard, Rashford and Martial in one game. The rest of the games we only had either Rashford or Martial. We attacked them with nothing, but we prevented them from doing the one thing that we wanted to do, and that was tactical. And now they don't have Raul Jimenez, so in theory, we should be able to do enough to get past them. This is a team that they played. We had an extra day of rest on them. And that at the end of that Tottenham game, they were throwing on teenagers because they had no squad depth. Yeah. So we have the advantage there. I'm more worried about a 0-0 really.
Yeah, well, that's all you do have to worry about against Wolves, I feel like it's been 0-0 a lot against Wolves. And like I said at the top of the show, Paulie,
I deleted it just before the show. I deleted it just before the show, but I came across the screen grab that I saw. It was in like the 90th minute or something, or the 85th minute, I think, of this game against Tottenham. And I was writing the tweet that said, it sucks because you know that Wolves are going to score 2 goals in the next 95 minutes of Premier League football, but neither of them are coming in the next 5. And as I was writing in the next 5 minutes, that's when they scored the equalizer. But they were exhausted by the end of that game. And we've been in great shape this season. We've been great in the second half of running teams off. My concern is we also looked really tired in the second half against Leicester. That we stopped, McTominay and Fred are out there for their energy, stopped closing down defenders. They stopped, we stopped pressing hard even in the middle of the pitch. In the areas where we normally press, we stopped running on them.
Yeah.
So that's my worry. And it always comes back to, like, I think one of the comments mentioned it before about how Ollie just thinks that he can't drop Bruno now because he needs him. And it's, okay, do you rest Bruno for 60, 65 minutes, but like knowing that you're probably going to have to bring him on to rescue this game? Or do you hope that you hit them at the beginning so you could take him off? And that's usually the strategy that Ollie opts for, and it usually stops working after a few games.
Yeah, but to be fair, Paulie, I prefer to start and try and get the game won than trying to chase a game. Because, I feel like we've chased lots of games this season, and it's only how long you can do that. Interestingly, this fixture last season, I was at the game. It was an absolute dire 0-0, but nobody cared because we just signed the Portuguese Magnifico who had 5 shots from outside the box, and everybody was getting excited about that, so nobody cared. And just for 90 minutes, the crowd just shouted, Bruno, Bruno, Bruno. So,
I missed that game live because I had a family thing, and I got back. I had it on DVR, and I got it was my fiance's friend's birthday, and I got permission to, like, all right, I'll come late, and maybe I'll miss it because I have to watch this game when I get home. It did not end well for me. Like, I was like, I put myself in the doghouse for this crap.
In theory, Paulie, this should be one of the most difficult games for Bruno because, look, he's playing against a lot of players that know him well as well, Paulie, from the international setup. He knows players. He's touched upon that already.
This is the game where I think if ever there was a game to try these 3 players, it might be the game. Pogba, Fred, Van de Beek, because it's, they are Van de Beek is struggling to adapt to England right now, but this is the most continental team in the Premier League. And maybe that will help him out.
Just on Villa quickly as well, Paulie, they do have a certain Jack Grealish who obviously we were linked with all summer. We'll be linked with again, I suppose, in January, although they'll never do the deal in January. And there'll be talk about him next summer. Look, I don't know how he feels about United. I don't know if he likes the idea of coming to United. I don't know if he's angry at United for not going through on what they wanted to do, on going through on the deal. But I do worry about Jack Grealish because when he came to Old Trafford last season, I thought he was brilliant. He scored a fantastic goal. He's going to come to Old Trafford with a point to prove, isn't he, I think?
He did. He scored a sensational goal. That's not why we didn't win, though.
No.
We didn't convert our chances, and Brandon Williams made a teenage mistake, which by playing Tyrone Mings, I think it was, played him onside, and that's the kind of mistakes that 19-year-olds make, and you hope that they don't come at crucial times, and this one did.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jack Grealish scares me, but it comes back, like, Wan-Bissaka needs to be fit. And that's the key for both of these games.
Yeah, let's finish with this, Paulie, then. Look, it is a bit off topic, like Aditi said, but we do like to get through your comments, guys. Thank you. We've had some great interaction with you guys who have been watching today, so thanks for getting in touch. He did say, Paulie, a bit off topic, but what are your thoughts on the rumours regarding Lindelof's possible injury? What would that force us to get a centre-back in January? I just quickly want to say on this, Paulie, I don't know where we are with this in terms of, I thought he was out for the season, but in Ollie's press conference yesterday, he seemed to suggest that he was going to monitor him over the next 24 hours. So is it not as bad now as first feared? What's the situation here? Do you know any more than we do or not?
I mean, it's not off topic. It's back on, because if Lindelof can't play, we need Wan-Bissaka or at the very least Brandon Williams to play, because Eric Bailly is too much of a liability, especially in the Premier League. So if Lindelof can't play, you need Axel Tuanzebe in there to hopefully gain a partnership with Maguire, because then maybe you get a better defense that way.
Yeah.
Lindelof's been carrying this back injury all season. In October, I heard that like he needed an operation that would keep him out for the season, that would put him out for the season, but he was going to hold off on that until the end of the year. And then Saturday, I heard he tweaked his back again, and now he needed to have that operation.
Yeah.
And so I've heard these whispers that he's going to need it and he's out for the season.
Yeah.
It didn't surprise me that United have not said anything, because I think that's the smart thing to do.
Yeah.
Because you're about to approach January, and
you don't want to come across desperate, do you?
Let's say that there's a defender out there for 25 million, and you, a week before January, say Victor Lindelof is out for the season.
Oh, no, we need a defender. We need a defender.
It's not that. Now that defender costs 40 million.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think it gives me hope. Look, this is good news either way. Is either they're monitoring Lindelof and he may be able to come back, or they're saying that they're monitoring it and trying to play it off like he'll be able to come back in a few days, so that they're not raising the market as they look to sign someone, to bring someone in. So if it's either one of those scenarios, that's fine. If it's they're monitoring him and they're not looking for somebody and he's not going to be able to come back, that's more of a problem. But I think it was smart to not, if he's out for the season and they haven't said it yet, that's a good thing, because it means they're looking for someone. So I'm not freaking out. Get into the first team unless you get an injury.
No, and I think we need another centre back anyway, regardless if we want to go to the next level. So
what I said to Hader today, I said we need McTominay and Matic to get injured in a training accident.
And then we go and sign a goddamn
he has to play McTominay, so he has to play Pogba and Fred.
Oh, we have to go and sign a CDM, because again, I've always said the key to solving the double pivot issue with Pauly is get yourself a very good CDM.
Look, it's basically, like I said, here's how I describe it, and I always use the fire analogy, is, everybody's talking about getting better firemen and maybe getting the firemen closer to the building, so that
maybe get rid of the arsonists,
so that fires don't, do as much damage. If you just install a sprinkler system in the building, you won't need the firemen as often.
Yeah. Or like I say, just get rid of the people who are causing the fires as well, Pauly. Look, that's a good way to end. Happy hour. We're both laughing, mate. I hope everyone else is.
I hope we're still laughing in 3 hours.
Well, I hope you're right as well, mate. I hope we are. But thank you again to everyone who's listening. If you are watching for the first time, do smash a like on the video. Do subscribe to the channel. Pauly, it's New Year's Eve on Thursday. Is there a United happy hour, or
there will not be? I will be in my car.
But Pauly will be spending a weird New Year's Eve in his car. Okay,
yeah.
Well, we'll leave that one, and maybe you can tell us more about that on the next happy hour, which will be next Tuesday. Until then, guys, take care. Happy New Year to everyone, and here's to a better 2021.